I am here with Brian McKelvey. He's become a fast friend of mine over the last few months at FST, and we just got done spending a few days at Springfield, Missouri, where I got to walk around with him to different clients and see the insides of shops and see exactly what he does as a technical sales technician over at FST. And I'm going to ask him a few questions as we're driving back to Texas from Missouri. So I hope you enjoy this episode. Okay, so you've spent many years on the service side. What did you learn from there, now moving into the technical sales side, that has changed your idea of what you see as a responsibility as a salesperson?
Making the transition into a sales role was a lot more streamlined for myself personally, because I was able to, in those years as a technician, get out and learn the industry, learn the clients, learn the different manufacturing processes, and see how different shops operate, learn a lot of things from industry experts and professionals who had done it much longer than I have, and just get a better grasp of the process as a whole when it comes to any type of equipment sales or manufacturing process. He gave me the tools I needed to really have high-level conversations and understanding of the different concepts and end goals of manufacturers in our various industries that we service. So it really equipped me with what I needed to be as successful as possible right out of the gate. And there wasn't as much of a feeling out period because I was able to put hands on with the equipment, learn the ins and outs of it. A lot of people can really tell when you have that kind of experience going into a sales process, because I tell people all the time, you can regurgitate technical details from a brochure or a handout or a leaflet or whatever you're handing out to your clients or potential clients. But until you've actually put hands on it and you really know it and know the process that goes into whatever you're trying to sell, people can pick up on that and they'll know. The nose for BS that people have is incredible a lot of times. So he gave me the ability to kind of avoid that because I actually came with facts and knowledge from firsthand experience.
Yeah, you've actually helped clients produce the actual thing they were trying to make with it. Like you've gone out and used the plate rolls and made sure they were working properly.
Yeah, not just installation and service and everything like that, but when you're doing installs and you're learning from factory technicians and guys who, like I said, have done it longer than I have, you're able to not just learn the equipment, but actually how to use the equipment to reach the desired result or output. You can take that knowledge with you to other applications where you can apply it and help, someone else who's trying to do the same thing or something very similar that knowledge can be applied to. And it helps fully understanding the whole process rather than just one component of it or just how a machine operates.
You think like knowing the service side of things has changed the way you'd sell as opposed to someone who's just got the book knowledge of it?
Yeah, absolutely. Because in the sales process, you're selling technology and great solutions and equipment, but you've also got to have the service that backs it up. And so when you know what goes into keeping someone up and running at 100% efficiency, minimizing downtime, that goes a long way in the sales process of being able to explain to a potential client or even an existing client who's looking to invest in a new solution or piece of equipment, how you're going to give them that peace of mind that they're going to be able to have as little issues as possible once they get this new investment up and running.
Probably increases trust as well as a salesperson working with the client, that they see, hey, this guy knows what he's talking about, and I know I can trust him, and I know I can trust him.
Absolutely.
Have you seen a situation where maybe the customer has the wrong machine or has purchased the wrong machine, and when you go in, it helps you kind of keep that honesty and direction with them as someone who knows the ins and outs of it?
Yeah, and I think a good example of that is, like you mentioned earlier about plate rolling. I have a pretty good background in plate rolling, pretty extensive. That's kind of where I cut my teeth in industry and really started in, is kind of plate rolling and the forming side of things. So being able to have that knowledge allows me to go in and maybe a client has purchased a roll and they feel like it's either being underutilized or it doesn't really do what it was sold as. And in the industry, we've come across that a couple times, in that some of our competitors will sell you on like rounding strength rounding capacity rather than pre-bending capacity. And when you get into plate rolling, there is a difference between just being able to round the material or also being to pre-bend the material, whereas you're trying to take a leading edge of that plate and pre-bend it to a point where you can have your edges match up a lot better than just having a really long flat ends. But not to get too deep into that, but there's a difference because when you're pre-bending the edge of the sheet, you have the whole other sheet, the whole rest of the sheet, I should say, out extended over the infeed roll. And so it takes a lot more power for that roll to actually put that bend on the material. And so there needs to be a difference stated in the sales process, like, hey, it might be able to round 1/2 inch, 836 carbon steel, but it may be only able to pre-bend, 3/8 inch 836 carbon steel. And so there have been situations in the past where we come on site and see a roll that may not have enough juice to pre-bend the material that they're needing to when they thought that they were getting, a 1/2 inch machine, but they can only pre-bend up to 3/8. So that's just one example. There are others, but that's the most common that I've seen.
What you're selling could mean hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars worth of product, or the thing that the client offers. And this machine is in between them and their end goal as well. So what do you think that kind of speaks to as far as the pressure of handling this type of machine?
I would say there's definitely pressure in that you're selling someone on a piece of equipment that, like you said, is going to be, potentially could be hundreds of thousands, if not, upwards of $1 million+ and more in some cases. But I mean, it's a huge investment for a lot of companies and you don't want to get it wrong. So that's why a lot of these processes are as long and dragged out as they are. We can go into a deal and not have anything inked for, 3 or 4 months because a company has to dot all the I's and cross all the T's to make sure that what you're providing is going to be exactly what they're looking for. So there is a pressure in that you have to scrutinize everything and be as accurate and upfront as possible so that you don't have any people second guessing anything during the sale or after the sale, after the equipment's been installed and up and running. So I would say there is pressure, but as long as you are knowledgeable on what you're speaking of and you're taking the time to really go over all the details and make sure that communication is clear on both sides, it minimizes the pressure a lot. And then, every single time you get into one of these situations, every time you do it after that, you're getting more streamlined, I guess, in the way you convey information, the way you receive it. And again, just adding tools to your arsenal, so to speak, that you can take into each subsequent deal. But there is always pressure there. I mean, when anybody trusts you with the sale of a machine that's hundreds of thousands of dollars, even a $50,000 or $60,000 bandsaw, I mean, you don't want to get that wrong and have somebody have a sour taste in their mouth because the industry's large, but at the end of the day, people talk to each other and one mistake could cost you on a future deal. So just trying to be as accurate as possible helps a lot. But there is definitely always pressure for sure.
Right. What was the transition period like from service to sales for you? Was there a time when you were like, this old me isn't going to work for my new position, or was it pretty seamless?
It's been pretty seamless because I'm very fortunate to work for such a great company and have great resources of knowledge to pull from, whether it's from Jeremiah or Keith or our vendors, all the sales guys and technicians that I've talked to from all of our great vendors. I was able to develop a base of knowledge and then also build rapport with clients that trusted me and would call me whenever there were service needs. And so when I would go out and help with service or do installations, you're not just working with the guys on the floor. You've got the higher ups who closed the deal with my boss at the time or the salesman who closed the deal. So I got to deal with, VPs and manufacturing engineers and process engineers. And so I could take things out of those conversations and learn from that. And so it made the conversations that I had to have when I moved into sales that much easier because I was used to dealing with those people and I kind of know how they would approach certain issues or topics or needs that they would have. And so again, it's just one of those things that made it pretty seamless for me. I was very fortunate to have a pretty good first year in sales, but it also just speaks to the level of teamwork that we've instilled at FST and with our vendors. And so I had, like I said, a great pool of knowledge to pull from and help me really be as successful as possible when I made the transition.
What do you think you've learned along the way to differentiate between what a customer asks for or thinks they need versus what they actually need?
I think that sometimes clients can get almost like blinders put on when they get super hyper focused on one specific task, and maybe they don't think of the process as a whole. So that's where we need to come in and really understand and kind of make suggestions about things that we've seen in the past or that we've learned in our time working in their industry. But for a lot of people, they're just getting into equipment, or they're adding a new product line, or they have a new job quoted that they've maybe never done before. And so they make a pretty basic request. And then from there, it's on us to ask the right questions and understand what their end goal is so that we can make the best offer possible to help them as easily and efficiently make the product that they're wanting to make and, make it to the best of their abilities.
What do you think the hardest lesson you learned along your trajectory here? What hard lesson did you learn that not only taught you about fabrication, but maybe taught you a little bit about life as well?
Moving into sales taught me you want to be present and persistent, but you don't want to bug or aggravate people. A lot of people, and it's not a knock on them because I know they're in sales too, but like freight sales and logistics coordinators, boy, they are relentless, and they'll email you and call you a couple times a week trying to figure out what kind of load you got. And I respect it, I do, but I feel like for us, a lot of times you want to make people aware of what you can offer and what you can do for them, but you don't want to be knocking on their door all the time. You want to set timely reminders to follow up with a call or a quick email and kind of just stay in front of them, but you don't want to feel like a nuisance. And I think that's something that I've taken into my personal life too, is that, a lot of my best friends I don't talk to maybe every day, but once a week or once every couple of weeks, you're checking in. Hey, how you doing? Let's get together. Anytime you're in the area, just stopping in. When we were just in Springfield, a good client of ours called them up and just said, hey, just want to stop by and check on you guys, see how you were doing. They may not have anything that they need right now as far as new equipment purchases or service related items, but it's always good to just stop in, shake a hand, just stay in front of them rather than just only hitting them up when you want something or when they need something, but just being more personable too, and just understanding that while we all have goals to, make sales and service sales and parts sales and everything like that, everybody at the end of the day is a person and they value their time. And so just walking that line between respecting someone's time, but also, doing your due diligence as a salesman to make sure that you're staying in someone's ear. It's a fine line to walk because I always felt like I didn't want to bug people. And so just remembering that people are people at the end of the day is a big thing.
Yeah. How do you become somebody that people can count on?
You got to show up. You got to be there. Hyper responsiveness. Although we may not, email or text somebody every week, when they do reach out, getting back to them in as timely a manner as possible. Even if you're indisposed at the moment or you're on the road, making sure that you have automatic email replies set up if you're going to be on the road or getting back to somebody, even if it's outside of normal working hours. I think that goes a long way. So you're not just leaving somebody in an inbox for a day or two is a big thing, but just showing up when someone needs you and being upfront too. If back when I was a technician and helping with the service side of things, letting someone know like, hey, we're gonna help you as quickly as possible and we're working on this, but it might be X amount of days or a day or two just because of what our current schedule looks like. Obviously, you want everyone to feel like they're your only client, but at the end of the day, most everybody in a professional environment knows that there are other goings on and tasks to complete. So just being upfront with people too, and also knowing when to say no. I've had people come to me with some pretty far expectations for something they wanted to do. And, just based on our current abilities or where we were at the time, just being able to say no and knowing not to just be a yes man all the time and taking on things that are going to really drag you down or lead a potential client on is a big thing too, because people do respect that. Everyone's time is valuable, like I said. So when you do say no and you maybe can steer them into, hey, you might want to talk to these guys or look at this, something that might be outside of our scope or range, that goes a long way for building that trust.
sometimes being able to say no makes your yes is more valuable as well. So
Yeah, I would agree 100%.
what do you hope someday people will say you're great at that has nothing to do with what you do for work?
Man, I would say that, and I strive for this in day-to-day life, is just being a good person. Religion aside, and that's a whole different topic to get into, but just being a good person, just realizing that, you know, everybody's life is as complex and intricate as your own, that outside of work, you know, everybody has personal things, familial things that are going on, and just respecting that and being there for people. We work to make a living, but sometimes, you know, just grabbing a beer or grabbing a meal with a client or a friend after a long day, it goes a long way of just showing that you're not only there to provide, you know, services, but you're also just there to be a human being to people. And having that work-life balance is big to a lot of people, especially the Europeans who we work with. But no, I think just being an overall good person. I feel like a lot of people would say that, but you have to really strive for it and like really want it. Because a lot of people put a mask on and they lead it, but as soon as the clock hits 5 or something, then it's all about them. But being able to have some free time, or when you do have free time, to set it aside and follow up with friends or loved ones is a big thing. So just being there for people. I would hope that at my funeral, people would be saying that I was that guy.
Yeah. I'd say I've known you just for a few months now. I'd say you're one of the more inclusive, genuinely considerate people that I've met, to where you're right, it's not just a mask. Because I've seen you behind the scenes take up for some people when it would be easy to knock, but you would just go like, hey, we got to give them a chance. And so you see the effort in person with some of these people. And then behind the scenes, you're actually adopting that. So I'd say you're well underway.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I do appreciate that.
Being the person you hope to be someday. What do you think the coolest place you've been based in this industry? What was your favorite trip you've gone on? Or
I've been so blessed to be afforded the opportunity to go to so many cool places and meet so many incredible people. It's really hard to pick, just because growing up, I never thought I would be in this position. But I really am extremely lucky to have been afforded some of these opportunities. I would have to say that, you know, I took a trip to Italy to visit with our vendor MCAR, who is in Toncarezzo, Italy, which is right outside Milan. And man, it was such a good trip because I not only learned so much about the products that we were offering from MCAR, but I got to learn the people at MCAR and learn kind of who they were and how they ticked. But I also got to see some pretty incredible things. I mean, anytime I get to go to Europe, it's such an awesome experience just because there's so much history there. But getting to, you know, take a train from Milan to Venice and see Venice for a day and then come back and, you know, see the Duomo, I would say that's probably my favorite trip. Followed closely by a trip to Spain that I took to visit some of our partners in the northern part of Spain in the mountainous region, because that's just incredible. And I mean, like I said, the history you see, I saw doorknobs that were older than our country. So it's always so cool to see.
Yeah. What do you think the scariest or hardest situation you've been in your journey here is? The most difficult experience or scariest?
Oh, the scariest. Boy, and there's been a handful. I would say back in the day when we had another service coordinator who came in for a bit, and he did a good job, but he just wasn't the right fit, I guess, for where we were at the time. But we were working a pretty large installation for an aerospace client. And after a couple weeks, it was he and I that were down there, but I was kind of heading everything up with him. But after a couple weeks, I needed to stay because these guys weren't completely comfortable with everything yet. And so I was helping them make tanks and everything. He bounced out and went home. And so then it was just little old me down there, and they were running 2 shifts, and each shift was 12 hours. And so I needed to train and be there for each shift. So I would go and I would work, 6 to 8 hours with day shift. And then I would work, 6 to 8 hours with night shift. And I would have an hour or two to drive back into town and get something to eat, sleep for a couple hours, and then come back up and be on site to be there with those guys again. And I would say I learned so much on that trip, but man, it was scary at first because I had never been in that position where it was just me. And I didn't have a factory technician there. I didn't have anyone else from FST. It was just little old me down there with a big group of guys who were doing a pretty big project. And, you know, it worked out in the end. We got it done, but it was a solid month of doing that. So I would say that was probably the most taxing physically and mentally. But in the end, we got it knocked out.
Yeah, that was a lot of responsibility dropped in your lap. Somebody's just like,
Yeah, I'm 29 now, but I think at the time I was 23, 24. And so for this piece of equipment that was to make these tanks was, you know, over $1 million. And when you're put in that position to be in charge of a project like that, it was definitely scary, but it made me so much better. Anybody you talk to who really knows and has been in those positions will tell you that in order to grow, you got to get out of your comfort zone, and you have to be willing to take that jump and do it, because comfort breeds complacency. Anytime you're able to expand out of that and really grow as a person and as a professional, you got to take it. And I feel very fortunate that I've had, you know, that's probably the most extreme, but I've had other instances like that. So again, it's just, you have to know where those times come from and where that inspiration and learning comes from, and really appreciate it and know that you grew as a professional and as a person.
how do you hope that you leave your thumbprint on FST? Years from now, decades from now, you're an old man and you're done. What type of mark, or what do you expect to have left?
Man, you know, we talk all the time about, you know, trying to take over the world. And with the team that we've been building, kind of feels like we're getting to the level of building like an Avengers style team. You know, I think you're one of the additions that's going to help us get there. Personally, I really enjoyed our time together. I hope it has many more years to come. But I would say just the thumbprint that I want to leave is just being like a Swiss Army knife.
Okay.
You know, I done it all. I did the service side. I still do to this day. I still like twisting the cap on backwards and getting out there with some wrenches in my hand and
We need to see that already.
yeah, making some things work, you know, fixing some problems, but also just being someone that our clients can rely on. And not only our clients, but my colleagues. You know, I want to be the guy who has, like I said, done it all and has the experience to new hires or colleagues can lean on in times of need. And I feel like we're all already there. We kind of have specializations. Just being able for people to look back on the history of FST, kind of know that I was in on the ground floor and was one of the, you know, hopefully one of the pillars of FST and what grew us to hopefully to the point where we have taken over the world, you know. But that's the end goal.